Zero Sievert has hit full launch status and is now in 1.0 as of October 23rd, so if you're jumping into the game for the first time or are coming back after a long break, this video should serve to give you a whole bunch of tips and tricks in an easy, digestible format. This video will include everything from combat tips to general info, modules, and crafting. If you're after a more comprehensive guide as a new player, I have one of those on the channel too. Like and subscribe for more content like this, and without further ado, let's get into the video. When you first get started in Zero Sievert, one of the biggest tips I can give you is to start collecting spare weapons and armor. Even if you don't want to use them, we can scrap these items and create a stockpile of materials that will go into your crafting efforts. Doing this now will mean that you won't have to do so later, when you're going into maps with higher quantities of high value loot available. Any items that you drop will hang around until the end of your current raid, which you might not see as a huge deal, but we can actually use this if you're finding your total carry weight to be a bit restrictive. You can load up your inventory with as much as you can carry, run to the nearest extract, drop your items, and then head right back in for another loot run. You can keep doing this as many times as you need to in order to fill your inventory. Something else that might be helpful to know when combined with the last tip, you can halt the extraction timer simply by opening your inventory or loosing a container. This means you can stick around that little bit longer to loot something within the extraction radius if needed. Keep in mind when returning to the bunker after a raid, radiation levels will remain the same as when you left that raid. The reason this is so important to know is because bleeds can start when you're in various menus and you will take damage. I've had a couple of close shaves where I've almost died as a result of this without even noticing. Oh, I'm like actively dying. I didn't think you could actively like bleed out in the base. So get in the habit of visiting the doctor after a raid before anyone else. When you're out on your raids, keep an eye out for patches of ground covered in loose sticks like these ones. They signify hidden stashes that can be looted for some random items, some of which can be quite valuable if you get lucky. One thing that you'll want to know about the airdrops coming into the area is that the longer they are on the map, the more loot will be taken from them. If you're after the biggest payoff, get to them early or you'll be fighting for scraps. Every so often, guns at lower durability are going to jam up on you, which obviously isn't great if you're in the middle of a fight when this happens. If you want something to make this easier on you, you can actually rebind this option in your settings. Usually it is bound to the V key, so instead we're going to bind it to middle mouse button. This will mean that you don't have to move your hand as much when clearing a jam, and you can keep your fingers on the movement keys too. Really, this just makes clearing a jam that little bit quicker and gets you back in the fight sooner. Once you reach the industrial area, think about bringing these stims in with you to protect you from high amounts of radiation. You'll only need to take one and they're pretty lightweight, but they can be an absolute godsend, especially when this green rain starts to fall. Your radiation levels are going to start building very quickly and you'll either want to find shelter or just head straight to extract. These boosters will give you some much needed time and allow you to make it there unscathed. You can actually reset your character perks for free as long as you're back at the bunker when doing so. This means you can make some changes before going out on particular missions. Let's say, for example, if you're expecting to go on a loot run where you'll be stocking up on lots of heavy items, you can switch out to some more loot focused options like Eye for Value to help you identify the worth of items in a raid, and of course other options that allow you to carry more weight. This also applies to weapon skills, which can also be changed at any point. A great example of using this to your advantage is switching to the skill Impaler Shot when hunting for the mutants known as Bigs, which are going to take a high quantity of hits to take down. Slowing them is incredibly beneficial and gives you crucial seconds to land more shots before they reach you. There are two NPC characters you can meet out in the world. The first is Igor, located in the forest map in a small house that looks like this one. Take his first quest, complete it, and you'll be able to call in for a cache of randomly collected loot items each time you revisit the forest. The second character you'll meet is Junker, who can be found in the makeshift camp by looking for what looks like a manhole cover with a ladder into the ground. Junker sells a few random items that might be a bit rarer and can go towards crafting modules. He'll also sell scrap, as his name might suggest, which might not seem very useful, but buying scrap from him essentially means less weight and inventory space being used up by heavy items like weapons or armor that you're trying to get out of raids just to scrap them. That inventory space can then be put to better use for more valuable trade items. There are a selection of unique bosses that you'll encounter out in the world. Even with the best equipment, they can make for a tough enemy to go up against. Each one will have different behaviors and a standard set of equipment that that is unique to them. Keep your food and water in the green if you can at all times. Having your food in the green will increase your total carry weight, whereas the hydration status being green will increase your looting speed. Sometimes it can be tough to know which modules to build for your base area, especially when you're getting started. Most of them are really just personal choice, but there are a couple I'd always recommend building. The first ones I usually go for are the bedroom or the workshop, and I don't think I'd ever want to do a run without them. The workshop allows you to repair armor or weapons using scrap, which is going to save you a ton of money on repair kits that are incredibly expensive to buy, especially for higher level armor. The bedroom, on the other hand, simply increases the healing you'll receive when resting, increases the rate of energy regained, and decreases the amount of food and water lost when doing so. The recycling center is another module that I always think is worth considering in the early stages of your game, even if you change it out for something else later. In the early stages, you'll be scrapping things to build up a stockpile, and the recycling center increases the amount of scrap you get from items. This means you can gather a whole lot of these materials early on, and then switch this module for something else once you've got some scrap stashed away. You'll acquire a storage module from Igor by doing his questline, or from General Artemovich for killing Igor. For that reason, it's often better not to construct your own storage module and instead put the crafting materials to use elsewhere. Equipping a weapon will entirely remove the weight of that weapon from your total inventory weight. When you're getting started, it can be incredibly beneficial to leave your second weapon slot open so that you can grab some extra weapons, take them back to the bunker, and scrap them for some much needed crafting materials. Almost every weapon attachment in the game, spare for a few, will weigh 0.1 kilograms. This makes them fantastic items to go for when making some quick cash, as many of them will have great sell values to them. If you're struggling to spot bodies amongst the grass, firstly, look for crows descending on them. They'll often do this, and it's a good indicator of where your loot is waiting for you. Secondly, and this is especially useful for the first two maps, you can change your grass density in the settings. Reducing this should help you see bodies clearly, even if you just want to bring them down to loot them and then bump it back up again afterwards. The barman will restore your food and water for you at a reasonable price, and the doctor can heal you, clear radiation buildup, and repair your armor. None of the services the doctor offers are particularly cheap, however, so that's where our next tip comes in. Taking a rest in either the bedroom module you add to your base, or in one of the beds at the top right of the bunker, can both heal you and remove radiation buildup. This is entirely free of charge, so unless you're specifically trying not to advance time, it's always worth doing. In most cases, bullets in Zero Sievert have travel time, unless you're using a scope, which instead makes your shots hit instantly. Scopes also give you the ability to look further than the edges of your screen, and as such, you can often outrange your opponents entirely and get a guaranteed first strike. The human combatants in Zero Sievert actually have some really good AI behind them, and this does affect your firefights with them. For example, re-peeking the same corner once you've already revealed yourself to an enemy will allow them to lock onto your location quicker and return fire faster. They will remember your last known location and may even use grenades to flush you out. To get around this, try different angles frequently to take the enemy by surprise, or buy yourself a crucial extra second or two before they return fire. In Zero Sievert, the crosshair has several states that relate to your weapon and your surroundings. If the edges of the crosshair are starting to tint red, your weapon will do less damage as it's moving outside of its effective range. This isn't just maximum range either, it can also happen if a target is getting too close to you when using a longer range weapon. This is why it can be incredibly beneficial to take an SMG, shotgun, or pistol into close quarter engagements. If the crosshair changes to an X shape, this means you won't do any damage at all. Lastly, if the center dot of the crosshair goes red, this means there is an object in your way. If you're finding that a trader is running out of cash and therefore not able to offer you money for your items, think about holding back some of the more expensive single slot items in your stash. This could include things like smartphones, necklaces, or military circuits, for example. When you're ready to make a large purchase, like on a brand new weapon or some armor or even attachments, take those items with you, and once you've made your purchase, you can cash in those valuable trade items to essentially get your money right back. This means less waiting around for the trader's stock of cash to reset. When going on your first runs, don't forget to use the track button on some of the modules that you want to build in your base. This will allow you to collect materials early, and the sooner you get those modules built, the better. Identifying friendly and hostile targets targets can be tricky, especially for newer players. To help with that, here's a handy on-screen graphic to help you learn which ones are friendly or neutral by default, displayed on the left side of your screen, and the ones that are hostile by default, displayed on the right side of your screen. Keep in mind that as your reputation changes, some of these factions may change their approach towards you. For example, if you decide to join the Green Army, the Crimson Corporation will then view you as hostile, and vice versa. Speaking of reputation, it's worth knowing that each kill of a faction member will reduce your reputation with a faction by 1 point. Attacking them in the first place will also reduce your reputation by half a point. This means we can occasionally get away with killing some members of friendly factions if we really want some of the equipment that they're carrying. There are two military factions in Zero Sievert, the Green Army and Crimson Corporation. They are both hostile towards each other, so you'll often find them fighting it out, and you can always swoop in to scoop up their loot if you'd like to. It's a good way to get your hands on some decent equipment. Once you've done enough quests for either the Green Army or Crimson Corporation, you'll have the opportunity to join them if you'd like to. But what's the benefit of doing so? Well, your reputation with the military factions is capped at 600 by default. You can only push it further by joining that faction. This will unlock access to certain items that you wouldn't otherwise be able to obtain, and allow you access to a new set of tasks that will come with some pretty good rewards. Most often, these missions pit you against their rival faction. Keep in mind, joining one of these two factions makes you hostile to the other forevermore. Green Army works primarily with Eastern weaponry, whereas the Crimson Corporation works with primarily Western weaponry. This is the biggest difference between the two of them, and you cannot change your mind after joining one of these factions, so make your choice wisely. An easy way to gain reputation with a faction in Zero Sievert is simply to sell your items to them. This isn't immediately obvious unless you know about it, and can be very beneficial to get you closer to better equipment, such as the higher grade night vision goggles for example, which are incredibly useful to have. You'll gain reputation at a rate of 1 point for every 20,000 rubles worth of trading that you do with them. Running a raid at nighttime can be scary, but one thing you should know is that the effects of night work both ways in Zero Sievert. What I mean by this is that not only is your vision reduced, but so too is that of human AI enemies, such as bandits. These guys will detect you at a much smaller range than they will in the daylight, and they'll use flashlights too, so you'll be able to see them clear as day in most cases. Taking a sniper out on a run at night can be incredibly beneficial if your target is a human enemy. It's also worth noting that many of the enemy NPCs won't use night vision goggles, so if you have those, you've got another leg up on your opponents. Another tip for you when it comes to nighttime raids, watch your back for hunters during these runs because they will not use flashlights, and as such they can very quickly sneak up on you if you're not prepared and put you in a very bad situation. You can right click anywhere on your map once in a raid to place a marker, which will then appear on your HUD to guide you to a specific area. You can add multiple markers at once and remove them simply by right clicking the same spot on the map that you originally placed the marker in. Don't skip the tutorial. I know I missed this the first time I played Zero Sievert because I assumed the tutorial would be played automatically when I jumped into my first match, but it's actually a different selection on the main menu. This tutorial will tell you some basics about the crosshair and how to interpret the damage done to enemies. You don't actually have to run around the bunker all the time. You can just press the H key by default and you'll see a list of options within the bunker that you can teleport to freely. Not a huge thing that's going to improve your survival rates, it's just a good option for quality of life that you might want to know about. There are 3 different types of night vision goggles in Zero Sievert, aptly named Night Vision Goggles 1, 2, and 3. Number 1 is the worst quality of the lot and honestly isn't really worth buying in my opinion. The image is just too distorted to really make use of them effectively, and you'd probably be better off with a head torch. Number 2 is slightly better, but you'll need 550 reputation built up to purchase them from either the Green Army or Crimson Corporation. This also applies to number 3, which is the best of the lot by far. It'll set you back a hefty amount of cash to buy them, and you'll need 850 reputation. It's worth noting that to buy night vision goggles number 3, you'll need to join a faction to be able to gain that much reputation in the first place. If an enemy is using a weapon that utilizes the same ammo as yours, don't forget you can right click on the firearm in their inventory and unload the ammo from it, giving you some more bullets to work with if you're running low. So that's it for all of the tips and tricks I've got for you in this video, but hopefully you've come away with some things you can take into your own playthroughs to make your life that little bit easier. If there's anything I didn't mention in this video that you think other players need to know, go ahead and drop it down in the comments section below and share your knowledge with others that might benefit. Thanks again for watching, folks, and I'll see you all in the next one.